Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Happy first Tuesday in November. That means we are about to enter the season of unpleasantness that the rest of the media calls the midterms. We call it unpleasantness. It's unpleasant. The people do not want it. But that's our democracy, and that's what happens in a democracy. You vote. People you don't much like sometimes win. So then they're in charge. That's how it works. So nobody should be surprised by anything that happens in American elections. Surprise is a sign that you have not been paying attention. So for the next 64 days, we will be subjected to polls that will tell us nothing that is true. And then after that, there will be an election. And then afterwards, we will find out who really is in charge. But tonight, we thought we would take a break from the midterms, because some stories simply transcend politics. They're bigger than that. They're more important than that. And this is one of those stories. Tonight, we are going to bring you the untold story of Hurricane Katrina survivors. No, really, this is their story. We'll let them tell it in their own words. But here's the amazing thing. Despite the fact that Hurricane Katrina was the deadliest and costliest natural disaster in United States history, despite the fact that the federal government admitted that its response to that disaster was an, quote, unmitigated disaster, despite all of that, the people whose lives were most upended by Hurricane Katrina are still waiting for anyone in power to acknowledge their suffering, let alone compensate them for it. They're still waiting for justice, which makes this one of the great civil rights stories of our time. And here is how it happened. 17 years ago, in August of 2005, Hurricane Katrina made landfall on the Gulf Coast of the United States. The storm was catastrophic, obviously. It destroyed tens of thousands of homes. It killed hundreds of people. But the true horror of Hurricane Katrina was what happened after the storm had passed. In New Orleans, levees broke and the entire city was flooded. And then the people of New Orleans discovered that they had been essentially abandoned by the government. Now, this was especially true of the people who lived below sea level in New Orleans East. They were almost entirely African American, and they were almost entirely poor, and they were forgotten. For days, people waited for rescue that never came. They waited for food, water, even for medical care. Some people died waiting for that assistance. Some people say that they watched their neighbors die and no one came to help. Eventually, the National Guard arrived and they forced thousands of people to evacuate. And when they did, they were told they could return home whenever they wanted. But many of them found that their homes had been destroyed, looted, or otherwise rendered uninhabitable. So they never went back. Now, this was an unmitigated disaster. In fact, the Washington Post called the federal response to Hurricane Katrina a, quote, textbook failure. And the head of FEMA at the time resigned in disgrace. But for the people who lived through it, that wasn't enough. They sued the federal government for failing to protect them and failing to evacuate them. And the federal government agreed to pay $75 million to settle those claims. But since then, basically nothing has happened. So tonight, we wanted to tell you their story in their own words. We traveled to New Orleans to meet some of the survivors of Hurricane Katrina and to hear what they had to say. Here is what we found. Well, I remember it like it was yesterday, but it was actually 17 years ago today. My name is Andrionisha Morse. I am a survivor of Hurricane Katrina. I was a homeowner. I had a business, a daycare. I had a house filled with toys. I raised 5 children. 3 of my children was adopted from foster care. I was a foster parent as well. And I just remember it like it was yesterday. The phone ringing off the hook, letting me know that the levees had broken. As a resident living below sea level, I didn't feel that no one was coming to save me. There were so many residents stranded. There was no food, no water. I remember watching a newscast and seeing Mike Brown standing in front of the Superdome, saying that we would be taken care of. And it was very heartbreaking to see him tell the nation that we didn't need anything, and that we should stay in the Superdome. But what we needed was water and food, and just help, period. When you looked outside the dome, everybody was looking for a ride. But nobody was coming to pick us up. Everybody was looking for water and food. There was a lot of things happening. Babies were crying, people were fighting, and it just seemed like the longer the hours went by, the more we didn't get nothing. It was the scariest experience that I had ever lived in my life. I remember walking down the steps of the Superdome and being exposed to the elements, the wind blowing, the rain pouring down, not having any type of protection over your head. And I said, wow, this is real. I remember being picked up and dropped off in a shelter in Baton Rouge. looking out the window and seeing my son Michael with a pair of shorts on and a t-shirt. And he had a look on his face like he was just scared. And I remember grabbing him and just hugging him tight, because he's seen something that no child should ever witness. And that's what I think about every day, the trauma that my kids endured. My name is Sheena Lewis. I lost everything, my house, my car, everything. I was living in a hotel for 2 years. My son had asthma, and there was no air conditioning in the hotel. He got pneumonia twice. I couldn't work, so I had no money coming in, and I had to watch him suffer. I watched him suffer. When we first got to the Astrodome, it was complete chaos. People were fighting, families were breaking up, and I remember getting sick and tired of people telling me that everything was going to be okay, that we were going to be taken care of, that we had everything we needed. And I'm thinking, no, we don't. We're hungry, we're thirsty, we're trying to take care of our babies. And that's when I realized that we were completely on our own. We were completely on our own. Nobody was coming to save us. It's been 17 years. It's been 17 years, and I'm still trying to get somebody to talk to me, to listen to me, to try to figure out how can we fix this, because a lot of us are still suffering. A lot of us are still sick, and we're wondering, why aren't we talking about this? Why isn't this in the history books? Why don't people know about this? My name is Cynthia Spencer. I am a survivor of Hurricane Katrina. I lived in the lower 9th Ward. I lost my house, lost everything. Everything. I'm currently still living in a FEMA trailer. Currently, I am disabled due to respiratory issues, asthma, heart problems. I have COPD. I'm a diabetic. And being in that dome with no air conditioning, not having my medications, I've had to deal with that ever since. There was a lot of promises made by a lot of people. A lot of politicians came through promising us certain things that never came to fruition. And I keep asking myself why. Why were we abandoned? Why were we forgotten? We were literally left to die. I've talked to a lot of people who are still dealing with mental health issues, physical disabilities, illnesses, and it seems like those wounds continue to run deep, and they haven't healed properly. My name is Donald Woods. I'm a retired major in the U.S. Army. I served 3 combat tours in Iraq. I'm a Bronze Star recipient, and I've done humanitarian missions in Africa. But when Hurricane Katrina hit, I was stuck in traffic on I-10 trying to get home to my family, and no one was coming to help us. And I thought to myself, man, if these levees break, we're gonna have a massive catastrophe. And sure enough, the levees broke. As a military officer, as a veteran, I organized a group of soldiers and went door to door, making sure that people were okay, and I helped them get out. I took a lot of people out in my truck, and then I went to the Superdome and I saw the conditions, and I said, this is a war zone. The only thing missing was the bombs. I ended up spending 3 weeks at the Superdome, and the conditions were horrendous. The sanitation was bad. There was no food, no water, no air conditioning. There was crime. There was violence. People were afraid for their lives. And then when we finally got out of the Superdome, I ended up staying at a Red Cross shelter in Baton Rouge, and it was just a nightmare. Where are my loved ones? Where's my family? What happened? And I'm still trying to find answers. I'm still trying to find answers. And I'm still trying to make people aware that there are thousands of survivors still suffering, still dealing with health issues, dealing with mental health issues, dealing with substance abuse issues. And I want people to remember that Katrina was not just a natural disaster, it was a man-made disaster. And I want people to know that this could happen again. We talked to a lot of other people, too, a lot of other survivors, and we'll let them tell you their story. They have a message for the country. We want you to hear what they have to say. Hey, I'm here. Did you forget about us? Do you think we're not here anymore? We're still here. We're still here. Do you think that we're not hurting anymore? We're still hurting. Do you think that we're not going to make noise anymore? We're going to make noise until we get our rights. We're going to hold these elected officials accountable until they do right by us. Hey, I'm here. Are you listening? Are you listening? Are you listening?